Good morning. I'm Andy Weissman, Mayor of the City of Culver City, and on behalf of my colleagues on the City Council, I'd like to welcome all of you here this morning. California is in the throes of an unprecedented financial crisis. Critical decisions are confronting cities and counties across the state. The days of easy budget fixes are long gone. Only hard and unpopular choices remain. Finding ways to get through these challenges requires leadership, vision, creativity, and political courage. It's my pleasure on behalf of the City of Culver City to welcome the Honorable Governor of the State of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Weissman, and for your nice introduction, and also thank you also to Mayor Mitchell for helping us pull this event together. And I want to thank all of you for being here today in such a short notice. But as you know, that we have a very important election coming up, so I thought that we all should get together and talk a little bit about what the consequences are of the outcome if it passes and if it doesn't pass. And in 2003, when I ran for governor, I ran because I wanted to go and fix the budget problem that we have and fix all the things that are broken in this state. And even though we fixed a lot of different things, but one of the things we couldn't fix yet is the broken budget system. We don't have a cap on spending. We don't have a rainy day fund. And that's why the state always goes back to transportation and take money from transportation. They take money from local government. They take money from pensions. They borrow money. And there's always chaos. And so I wanted to fix that so that we live within our means and move forward. And, of course, twice before, those ideas were taken out. You know, at one time I asked the legislators to approve a budget system that is a good budget system with reforms, and they voted it down. They had no interest in putting a cap on spending because they wanted to spend more than we have. And then the second time was when I took it directly to the people of California, which was in 2005. And then there was $160 million spent against those initiatives, and they were taken out. So, you know, this is the third time now that we're trying again to say to the people of California, please help us. Let's vote for budget reform so that we have a good budget system so we don't always have to come back to you and say we have to make severe cuts and we have to go and increase taxes. It's always just because you spend too much money. When we have a revenue surge, we spend it all. So this is why I wanted to come here today to you. And I think it's our responsibility, because we have such a great partnership with all of you and have done so many things together, to share some of those thoughts with you on what is going to happen in the next few days. I think that to update you on this information is always very crucial because you've been there with us from the beginning. Behind those numbers, of course, when we talk about numbers, it's always easy to talk about numbers. But the important thing is to let everyone know that behind those numbers are real people. There are people that are like kindergartners that are learning to read, firefighters risking their lives to keep others safe, healthcare workers ensuring that the elderly remain in their homes, and so on. California dollars and cents affect real lives. And that is why I've been fighting and fighting and fighting, not so much for the party, but for the people of California. That's what this is all about. It's not a political fight. It's a fight about what is best for the people. And in February, we were very fortunate to have the legislators come together after months of battling, but 2/3 of the legislators came together and voted on a budget to take on the challenge of a $42 billion, which is a historic number, $42 billion deficit. It was done with a combination of things, which includes tax increases and also severe cuts. But the $6 billion worth of the solutions will now go before the voters. And they're critical, a critical piece to the state's budget puzzle. Whether they pass or fail, I think we have the responsibility to plan for either of the scenarios. That's why we are doing now our May revise. And when we do our May revise this time, which we will announce on May 14th, you will see 2 May revises, so that the people see what the difference is. If on May 19th it passes, here's one scenario. This is what we need to do in order to balance our books by July 1st. If it doesn't pass, if those initiatives don't pass, then here's the other scenario with the more severe cuts, which is the $6 billion hole that we're talking about. And, of course, that will have a tremendous effect. I know that the result of the proposition failing on May 19th will mean $6 billion in additional severe cuts. Now, we know that the state will be forced to reduce essential services when that happens. That could include schools, healthcare, prisons, fire stations, and local services. Our Department of Finance has been drafting options now in case those initiatives fail. If they fail, none of those options are pleasant. That is the important thing for people to know. But let me give you just an idea of how the Department of Finance sees those things shaping up right now. And these are just some ideas. This is nothing concrete. This is not the official May revise, may I remind you. These are just some of the ideas of what will happen if the initiatives don't pass. Fire stations, for instance. Unfortunately, our state is facing very real possibilities of closing fire stations and reducing our fire staff. That includes a 10% reduction in CAL FIRE overall budget, closing 11 conservation camps, closing 20 fire stations, and staffing engines with just 3 people rather than the 4 people, which is so important during the fire season. Prisons. Prisons are another option that must be explored, namely releasing around 40,000 inmates, releasing non-serious, non-violent, non-sex offenders, of course. We would never release those. But those are the ones that could be released if they're non-serious or non-violent, non-sex offenders. We could save in general funds about $53 million in 2009-2010. Releasing all the undocumented immigrant prisoners to the federal custody could save us another $182 million for 2009-2010. And, of course, when it comes to schools, unfortunately, would also face severe reductions. If you take the legislative analysts' projections, there could be $3.6 billion in additional reductions to education. You heard me right, $3.6 billion. That means that this money will come by laying off, for instance, 51,000 teachers, or shutting down every school in the state for 18.5 days, or increasing class sizes by 17%, or laying off 90,000 support staffers, ranging from custodians and food service workers to bus drivers, maintenance people, and so on. When it comes to local government, and that's why I wanted to also have you hear that, we may have to have no other option than to look at borrowing from local government. Now, as you know, that I am very much against borrowing or taking any money from local government, and I fought that battle the whole last year. And that's what Proposition 1A is about, to protect local government. But within that provision, we can borrow twice in 10 years. So what this would mean is that we will come to you and borrow money, which will be around $2 billion in 2009-2010 from cities and from counties, meaning reductions in locally funded services such as police officers and fire stations. So that's the effect it would have. The state could also be forced to look at further cuts in Medi-Cal. Now, that is really terrible because we already have made severe cuts in Medi-Cal and also severe cuts in home support services, but we would have to go back and make some more cuts in that. That's not a good thing to do, of course, because whenever you have a declining economy, those are the areas that need your support the most and that need money the most. This is the reality of what we are facing in our state, and it's just basically the $6 billion question. This is something that is in front of the voters. We want them to approve those things. And, of course, whatever the voters decide, we will respect their opinion. That's the bottom line. We always respect their opinion, and we will work with the people. But I think it is important for people to know that this is about California's legacy. This is not about my legacy. It's not about the politicians in Sacramento. It's not about Democrats versus the Republicans. None of that. This is about the state's legacy, and it's about the state of California's legacies at stake. It's about putting the Golden State back on track to get it into the right direction. That's what the people are voting for. And I think the important thing is also to know that when we have our act together, and when things are moving forward in the right way, like if those initiatives pass, then, of course, we can go out. We have the financial community on our side. people all over the country and all over the world will have confidence again in California, and we can go and sell our bonds. If it is our bonds for stem cell research, our bonds for hospitals, our bonds for infrastructure and all this. We have seen in the last time when we passed the budget in February how quickly the treasurer could go out and sell the bonds, $6.5 billion worth of bonds and $6.9 billion worth of bonds, because people had confidence again. So this is why this is very important that this passes, and that's why I want to urge all of you that we work together as much as possible this next few days to make sure that the people understand the importance of having those initiatives pass, and that the people also understand that we understand that they're angry. People are angry at Sacramento. People are angry at the politicians. But they should not let that anger out on killing those initiatives, because what they will do is they will hurt their local communities. They will hurt the local schools. They will hurt the local healthcare centers, the local law enforcement, the local fire stations. All of those things get hurt. Sacramento will not get hurt. The legislators will continue receiving their great, great golden health care plan. They continue getting their money paid, their salaries. They will continue getting their bonuses. They will continue doing all of the things that they always have done. So nothing will happen to them. But your local schools, your local services will get affected by that in a tremendous way. So we hope that the people are with us on all of this. So if you have any questions about this, because I wanted to come here and have just an open discussion about this and what you're thinking is and what we can do together in order to really help you so that you can go out and communicate to the people and let them know how important this is and how urgent this is. And because the poll numbers show that we are still 5 points behind. And so that doesn't mean it's over. It just means it's an uphill battle. When I did the redistricting reform just last November, we were also 6 points behind 10 days before. And then we won by half a point. I remember the time when they had an initiative on the ballot to take out the three-strike system. There was 2/3 ahead and was about to win by 2/3 of the votes. And then 2 weeks before, we turned it around by having a TV campaign and communicated to the people what that would actually mean, that there would be people released from prisons, they would be roaming in your neighborhoods. That's not what you want. So be careful of what you wish for here. And we turned it around, and then it was defeated by 2/3 of the votes just in 14 days. All of that happened in 14 days. So I think the key thing is that we change the dynamic and that we communicate with the people out there and make sure that they vote. So with that, I want to open it up to maybe some of you local folks where the real action actually is.
Can I go first, if that's okay?
Sure.
I mean, my question is why? I mean, I look at myself. I'm living with HIV and AIDS. I'm on Social Security disability. I've had to cut back substantially to live within that need. My city council is very minimal. I can only take so much of it because I'll lose my Social Security. If I can cut back, why can't the state start cutting back?
Well, that's a very good question, and I think it's important to note that last year we made 10% cuts in the budget because we saw the problem coming. And then this year we made an additional 10% cuts in the budget this fiscal year. So that's now 20%. And then when we saw, while we were negotiating, we saw the problem getting worse, we even cut more. We cut it was actually $16 billion this year rather than $10 billion. We cut $16 billion this year. So altogether, between last year and this year, it's $26 billion in cuts. And we did the revenue increase of $12 billion to solve the thing. By the time we were finished with the negotiations and we started putting this on the ballot, we found out from the legislative analyst's office and also from our finance department that actually the budget is $8 billion short, that the revenues are $8 billion short. It was just in 2 months. So what you see here is a drop in revenues because of the overall economic crisis that is worldwide. And this drops in revenues they have in Germany, in Japan, in China, and everywhere all around the world, of course. So this is what we are faced with. We are seeing at $100 billion budget, all of a sudden we only have $75 billion left, and therefore you have to make severe cuts. But our budget was done where we included the lottery, and where we included taking money from Proposition 10 and from Proposition 63. And so now if those things don't pass, if our budget package that the people are supposed to approve, if that doesn't pass, then we will have an additional $6 billion in problems. So that is, you're cutting into some really serious services for the people of California. And I want the people will make the choice. But what is important for us to do is to let people know, here's what will happen, so that comes May 20th, and we then make the announcement and say, okay, here's the budget that we have to now adopt because you didn't vote for those initiatives. We don't want anyone to be surprised and say, oh, I didn't know this will happen. I didn't know you have to lay off 50,000 teachers, 50,000 more teachers, or anything like that. We just want to make it clear and let everyone know what the consequences will be.
Will you fight, though, to protect the city's money? I mean, I'm already $2 million on an $18 million.
Oh, as I have said to you many times, that I always will fight for local government, as much as I also said when I was up at the fires in Santa Barbara, that I will always fight for the firefighters, because I think when you talk about public safety and when you talk about, helping the people on the local level, of course, people need the services, but if you only have so much money, somewhere you have to take money out. Somewhere this $6 billion have to come from. Now, I have not sat down with the legislative leaders yet and said, okay, let's work this out together. So this is why I say these are proposals of what it could mean, and they may have some ideas on how to get additional revenues. They can call Obama and say, hey, we need another $10 billion. I don't know, but I mean, all I can tell you is the way it is right now, severe cuts will happen. And it's important also for people to know this is not a scare tactic. This is just to let you know what could happen.
Governor,
yes.
We appreciate, the cities appreciate very much the efforts that you made to work with us in the past on these issues. But we here, and all of our cities to varying degrees, we're at the basic level. We take care of the stuff under the ground, the sewers, the water pipes, the streets, the potholes, the signals, the street lights, the police and fire. And we're in the city of Southgate. We're stressed very, very difficult. We are requesting a 10% cut from all of our employees. We're looking at various other things. We're kind of at the edge of going off this cliff. And if you have to go to Plan B, I don't want to appear negative or anything like that, but if you have to go to a different plan, it could very well push us and a number of cities off the edge of the cliff. We've just lost the Han Corporation, which is a major manufacturer of metal furniture. They've just announced the shutting down in our community. They're our second largest employer, and we're facing some very difficult times. So we're just very hopeful, and I know you have a very difficult task in front of you, that you're able to work with the legislature, and if you have to go to Plan B, realize that in the local communities here, where the rubber meets the road, we're the ones that have people come and throw things out at the city council meetings when we don't fix the potholes or the water pipes break or the sewer overflows or whatever. It's critical, and we just hope that you will realize that and be as careful as you can with that pencil when you have to do certain things.
Well, first of all, let me tell you, I totally hear you in that, because this is a common story that I hear from a lot of local officials and leaders, mayors, county officials, and everyone. It's the same story. It's like, the straw that breaks the camel's back. We don't want to be that straw, because everyone, you're all out there hanging on the cliff. So we don't want to be the ones that push you over. But I mean, at the same time, I think what our meeting here is about is to let you know that because we are in that situation, let each and every one of you do everything that you can to convince your voters to vote yes on this proposition, so we don't have to get to that point. Now, when we get to that point, obviously we're going to work with you, because the only way we can take on any of those challenges if we do it together. It's not. I don't believe that we in Sacramento should just sit there and make our decisions independently without outreach and without being in touch with you and doing it together with you. So we will be always working with you. If they pass or don't pass, we're going to go and march through this together and try to figure out how do we help each other as quickly and as well as much as possible. And I think the key thing now is for us to convince the voters so we don't get to that stage in the first place.
Governor.
Yes.
Governor, one of the things that's kind of difficult an imbalance of funds. In our city, we are trying to build a brand new park. Our city's a 1 square mile. It's a low income, middle income city. It doesn't have that many services or resources. We're trying to build a park. We were granted funds, and then we were told that our funds are on hold because of the economic situation. At the same time, we're battling LAUSD. They're trying to build a school in our city. We're trying to work with them to pick a spot that would be beneficial for both our cities and the other cities. And at the same time, we're being told that teachers are being laid off. So to our community is saying, well, what is happening in Sacramento? We're told that we can't get money for a park. They're laying off our teachers, but LAUSD is bulldozing to try to build brand new schools. And if you go to the southeast, you'll see construction all over. So the question is, why does it seem that there's no funding for certain programs that are really important for local cities, but there seems to be funding for items that, if we're laying off teachers, why are we building brand new schools? And so we're trying to give confidence to the people. Yes, you need to vote for this. We know that they're going to go ahead and have the funds go the right way. But in today's world, right now, currently, it's hard to convince them when we have these actual events happening in our city.
Okay, just so you know, two different things. Services and ongoing programs versus infrastructure building. In 2006 and in 2004, 2002, the people of California have very clearly voted for infrastructure bonds to build schools, to refurbish, to add, to improve the schools, and so on. I remember the last one that I was involved with, which was in 2006, to build $10 billion worth of schools and $20 billion of infrastructure and transportation and affordable housing to fix the levees and all of those things. Californians have finally made a commitment to rebuild California. Well, now they sold those infrastructure bonds. And it went out to the people. After the people have approved it, went out and sold it successfully. Now they have this money lying there. And now they have a plan. Here we're going to build a school. Here we're going to build a school. Here we are short on classrooms. We have to build a school here. And those things take years to plan and to get the permits and so on. And now they're on automatic pilot. The money is available for building a school. You couldn't take that money and say, because it's been approved by the people, and say, let's use that for hiring more teachers. You couldn't legally do that. So this money is for building the schools. That's why it does not cross over. What the other thing is Proposition 98 money. So what I'm saying here is if these propositions don't pass, we would have to have, and with the situation that we're in, we would have to have another $3.6 billion in cuts. And that is an equivalent of laying off 51,000 teachers, or a combination of laying off teachers, laying off some of the support services, cutting down the school year, and those kind of things. So, like I said, we have not come to a final conclusion because I want to work out some of the stuff with the legislative leaders. But those are severe cuts, historic cuts to Proposition 98. And so I think people should be aware of that we need this extra $6 billion. Otherwise, $6 billion worth of cuts have to be made. And as you know, half of those cuts, or half of the budget, is always education. So that's where the big cuts will come from. Prison, education, healthcare. This is where the big money is. Yes.
The hardest part is that for much the selling on the local level is we've made the cuts. We've balanced the budgets. And yet we're being taking money from us doing our jobs the way we should have done. And the biggest obstacle I keep hearing too is that even some of the propositions are even changing what some of the voters wanted to do. And here it is bringing it back. So it's a hard sell from a local standpoint. And then we have the threat, hey, we balanced the budget, and now you're taking this subprime loan, if you will, from the state, and you're going to pay it back within 3 years. We don't have the 3 years. We need to pay our policemen, our firemen. We need to pay our roads today. So it's a very hard sell from a local economy standpoint. And yet we've done our jobs right.
Well, no, absolutely. But remember when we passed Proposition 1A a few years ago that said that the state cannot go in and take any more money from you without permission, and they can only borrow and no more stealing and all of those things. And it passed overwhelmingly with 82% or whatever it was. So I think this is the same thing. It's what I'm saying is we always have to fight to protect local government. And the way you protect local government is to make those initiatives pass, because then no one has another excuse or a reason to come back to local government to take your money. Because as long as I'm in office, I always will fight to make sure they don't ever take a penny from you. That's the whole idea. But when you all of a sudden have a $6 billion bigger hole, then all of a sudden people get very creative up there, and they look at everything.
Governor, I think you just hit on a key issue, though. You made a couple of statements in your opening remarks. You said that nobody's mad at Sacramento, or they're being mad at Sacramento, and that is true. But they're not mad at us as the local politicians. But should we get to what you may have to declare with Prop 1A and take our money, they're going to be mad at us. And like what Mario just said, we have done our jobs. But, you know, a poll less than 30 days ago showed that 75% of people are against public safety cuts. So you said, no, they're mad at Sacramento, but yet you said they're not going to suffer. This is a huge disconnect for normal citizens.
Right.
I don't understand why the Speaker of the House and the Speaker of the Assembly are not standing behind you. And the minority saying, we're all in this together. There's the disconnect. In the city of Whittier, if we say, state needs money, we need you to support these propositions, our residents say, gee, that's funny. When I'm in trouble and I'm not managing, I've gotten laid off, my hours are cut back, I've sold my boat, I've sold my motorcycle. In the city of Whittier, there's Nellis facility's been sitting there vacant for years. There was a bid 3 years ago of $108 million. The state held it up to where now the correctional receiver has got his fingers on it. And our citizens say, you know, here's $108 million 3 years ago that the state didn't want to sell, didn't want to take. How do we sell your propositions to them when there's clearly a disconnect between the legislature and the Senate being held accountable and the fact that the state has not come up and said, we could use this money, let's sell it, and let Whittier develop it and get their economy going with it. Those are disconnects that are just horrible. Last question, are you going to put the effort in to close the gap as you did in the last election on the propositions? A lot of questions, but
What was the last question?
are you going to be able to put the time and the money in for the campaign to close the gap on these propositions?
The only way you close the gap is not just with money, because we have raised almost $20 million on this campaign. And we've been out there, you know, putting the TV commercials out there. We've been on radio and all this. But I think none of those campaigns, you know, are successful unless the locals, the people, get involved and really push the voters and explain to them how important it is. What made Proposition 1A pass was that every one of the local communities went out there in front of the City Hall and had a big rally and talked about the importance of passing those initiatives. And they put the spotlight in their neighborhood on that everyone saw on the news. And we traveled around the state, talked to the local leaders like we're doing now, and then they had an event out there. And so we just really, everything happened on a local level. There was not that much money spent on it, I think around $10 million or so, but I mean, the rest of it was just work on a local level. And that's what we want to do here, is there's only so much you can do on television. We are spending money there. But the key thing is it's just for people to understand that because right now their anger is directed at Sacramento, and believe me, rightfully so. Not wrongfully, rightfully so.
No, I agree.
Because everything that you said is absolutely correct. I've been fighting for 5 years to make the state sell state property. And right now, because we're in a fiscal crisis, right now they are finally talking about, you know, St. Quentin, and they're talking about, you know, our Coliseum. That is, you know, that USC tried to buy, and we wouldn't buy it, we would just lease it. Why are we hanging on to those properties? We are not in the real estate business. You know, why are we having parks? Why are we having golf courses? Why do we have, you know, all of this kind of property? So, like you said, that when you're in an emergency, people sell off boats and sell off motorcycles. We, the state in an emergency, should immediately look at the inventory and sell off all the stuff that you have, even though it's a downturn economy and it's not a good time to sell. But nevertheless, some of it ought to be sold, and also to make serious cuts. I tell you, the cuts have been made. There's additional cuts that will be coming if this doesn't fly, those initiatives. But I think the important thing is to know is that I just don't want to go and have the state get in a stage where it would take a long time to repair the state and to bring it back again. Because the confidence level that the financial community has in California, and the way the world looks at California, if this doesn't pass, it will go down immediately, and we will not be able to sell bonds. we would not be able to go out and do anything financially because we would have to get a loan somewhere, find the money somewhere, and that's also very hard to do under the circumstances. So we are in deep, deep trouble, unlike anything else that the state has ever faced.
Governor, I really appreciate the partnership you've had with cities in the past, and hopefully we'll continue that partnership. But I must comment on the Plan B. You were just talking about the difficulty of borrowing money. Obviously, part of Plan B that you mentioned earlier is to borrow money from we cities. And from a city's perspective, it's kind of like a subprime loan. They're asking us to loan money to a state entity that isn't creditworthy. And so I'm here to ask your support on that, as you have supported us in the past, but also to offer our support. We'll be happy to wave our cards around and make the pitch that borrowing money from the cities isn't a viable alternative. It takes money that we need now. It promises to pay it back from an entity that, well, quite frankly, we're not sure will be paying it back, and we're not sure when they will get around to paying it back. And I hope you'll continue to make that argument as you have in the past to support us, and we're here to continue supporting you with that message. The state is not a good borrower. They're subprime. We ought not be making the city's loans to subprime, creditworthy people.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you,
Governor, thank you
I think we
very
have
much.
time for one more question.
Thank you, Governor. I appreciate it. As President of Contract Cities, my colleagues know that I've praised the Governor many, many times for being such a good friend of local governments. Governor, I've said it before your staff, I said it before you before. We really do appreciate it, and we hope that you will continue fighting the fight with us. It is extremely important that my colleagues are making the case for you as to how we would suffer, but it's also important to note that the local governments actually do continue to pay the state to the tune of close to $1 billion a year, even post Proposition 1A, from our property tax revenues. It's not like local governments are not pitching in. We are forced to let people go from our city staffs. Question is the state letting people go from their staffs before reaching to us who are already doing the sacrifice at the very local level? So we thank you for fighting the fight with us, and we hope that you will continue. As Owen suggested, we would be there anytime you want for us to be there to fight this fight, because we know our local constituents are with us when you're talking about local services and firefighters, police. Tomorrow, Judy and I sit in our city in our law enforcement meeting to talk about potential cuts to our core deputies, which are our school police. I've heard already from many moms in our community saying that's a horrible idea. Please help us fight the fight with you, and we assure you that we will fight that fight with you just as well. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
And I want to thank the governor for coming today and taking time out to speak with all of us and hear our concerns. We certainly have enjoyed a partnership with you, Governor, over the last few years. You've always been a strong ally of local government. You have protected our local revenues, and we appreciate that. As you've heard today, cities are in fiscal emergencies themselves. They're making cuts, they're laying off people, postponing projects. And I think you've also heard today that our residents, our voters, would like to see the state make the necessary cuts that they have to make in order to get their budget in control. As we have made our budgets balanced, we expect the state to do the same. And you know the League and contract cities have supported the ballot measures. We commend you and the legislature for balancing the budget this time with state monies. You haven't turned to local monies or to borrowing to balance that budget, and we're very thankful that you have taken those steps. We know that your support for local government has involved statements that borrowing from local government is irresponsible. And I recall hearing you say just a few months ago, we can't kick the can down the road. And that's what happens when you borrow. And we had launched a campaign last September, in the summer, when we were trying to balance the budget, to cut up the credit card. And so I'm going to give you today our new credit card. This is expired. So we want you to know that the credit card has expired, and we would like to see a balanced budget, balanced with state monies, and we support the ballot measures in order to get that done. So thank you so much for coming. We enjoy your partnership and look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you all.